All right. Welcome to another edition of Sabbath Lounge. This is Matt today, flying solo, and just wanted to thank you for stopping by. Jake and I, mostly me, I've been extremely busy, and Jake and I have not been able to collaborate as much as we'd like, and we will get back into the swing of things once I get through my busy season, and then we'll be able to go back to normal. But as I was driving around, I had some thoughts and I kind of recorded them, and I wanted to share with you these thoughts. We've been studying in the Torah portion about the tabernacle. And so the tabernacle and what we had read about is being built from the inside out. This tabernacle is a reflection of our own physical heart. Just like us, the tabernacle is a movable structure covered with skin. And inside the Bible, inside the Torah, there's a lot of verbiage about the kidneys and the liver and all these detailed steps about what needs to happen to these vital organs. Details about how you're supposed to prepare the kidneys and liver for different sacrifices. Well, turns out the kidneys and liver in the ancient world represented the seat of the mind, the heart, and the emotions of a human. In essence, what the Bible is telling us to do is that we need to hold our mind, heart, and our emotions under the fire to burn them clean and get rid of the impurity. Because in Jeremiah 17:9, we know that the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? So we know this. We must learn to put our heart on the altar, to put it on the fire, to have it burn clean, burn away the impure thoughts, the impure rebellious ways, burn it all off. Burn away the leaven of man's teachings. This is the work of what's supposed to be happening inside of our holy temple. It's what we represent. We are the fleshly covered tent of meeting where the Holy of Holies resides. So a side note about all this is an interesting thing that we see is this concept of inherited memories. And you can find this study. I know nothing about this person. I can't endorse this person. There's all kinds of weird things I realize. But it's not hard in a few searches on the internet to find some things about human memory and a concept. And I found this article. This one comes from Boston University. Someone wrote it. It is listed as an article or an opinion, but talking about how the brain is not the only place to store memories. Well, the reason science got to this conclusion is because many transplant people that receive the transplants would describe to their families memories that never occurred. And the families would begin to hear these crazy stories coming from the person, and they're like, what is going on? That never happened in our family. And then they started talking to the families of the donor, and they realized that those were memories that donor had. And some pretty crazy accounts and things, and you can read about that. But it's interesting, that turns out that those concepts and the things that we're reading in the Torah, of course, it's rooted in something real. But I will caution you when you go down this trail, some of this stuff you're going to see from perspectives that aren't from a godly perspective. And I am no way endorsing or saying that these people that I'm referring to are. I know nothing about them. But I do understand that concept exists and that people have thought that. So anyway, so let's go back to what we're talking about. So we talked about how the heart is deceitful above all things. We must learn to burn away the impure thoughts. And so we see in the gospel accounts that Yeshua washes the people's feet at Passover. And the Torah talks very specifically and tells you that he is trying to teach them how to be a humble servant and be God in the flesh. That's what it says. But there's another piece to this, and he is performing a priestly duty that we read about in Exodus. In Exodus, where Moses was commanded to wash Aaron and his son, preparing them for their ministry as a priest. In Exodus 40:31 through 33, it says, "And Moses and Aaron and his sons washed their hands and their feet, and they went into the tent of the congregation." And notice, congregation, it's there, and they came into the altar and they washed as Yahuwah commanded Moses. So you've got this concept of this washing of the feet. And so and that's there. And so, this concept of where Yeshua washes his disciples' feet, it wasn't just about cleanliness. It wasn't just about that's just what they did. Yes, it definitely was what he was showing them, how to take care of each other and how to be a servant. It just flat out says that, and so you can't argue with that. But there is a concept of that he is preparing them for priestly duty. So there's a lot of concepts. If you go look at even the laver, and it's this concept of being washed and being cleansed, and even in John 13:10 and Ephesians 2:6, this concept of being sanctified and washed and cleaned. So definitely there. So the disciples definitely knew this story in ways maybe we don't. He's preparing his disciples to be his holy priestly nation, to go out to do their priestly duty. He is preparing them to teach others about the principles learned in the Torah, the principles found in sacrifice. We must learn to deal with our own thoughts and emotions, learn to set them on fire and to burn away the impurities, to get rid of the leaven of man and get back to the commandments. Get back to knowing what it means to live a holy and set-apart lifestyle. They lived in a free republic, much like our own. And that free republic did not want to hear about how it was bad and wrong to indulge in the fleshly things they enjoyed. They liked their life. They liked what they did. It felt good. They did it. So they didn't really want to hear about the things they weren't supposed to do, things they weren't supposed to eat, things they weren't supposed to go. And so a lot of comparisons to the world we live in. People don't want to be told these things. So definitely a connection between Moses washing the feet and Yeshua washing the feet. Just go look up all the different passages where feet are washed, and it starts all the way really with Abraham, and he washes the feet of the people that come to see him, to tell him some news. So go look that up. But he wants us to be a holy priesthood, a holy set-apart nation. And so we must learn to teach our children that it's okay to be different from the rest of the world. In fact, we want this. The world seems to be going out of its way to conform, to be like everyone else. And it's almost like a form of brainwashing where there's so much pressure on you to conform to the mask, to conform to, to different medical procedures and things. Just there's a lot of pressure to do and be like the world around you and to not be weird. You must obey kind of thing. Which is definitely interesting. And so it makes me think of Daniel. We need to learn to be able to stand firm in the faith. And what we see in Daniel, so let me switch over here. What we see in Daniel is this. We see in Daniel that, if you look up some of the concepts, Daniel lived in a time after 586 BC. In 586 BC, the temple gets destroyed and burned. People get taken into captivity. Daniel and the people around his boys, if you will, they were dragged along with him. And so, but there was a concept that existed way before this. And so at the dedication of the temple in 1 Kings 8:3, Solomon says, this is the NIV, he says, may the whole thing, let's see, I'll just, it says, when the people of Israel have defeated by an enemy because they've sinned against you, and when they turn back to you and give praise to your name, praying and making supplication to you in this temple. So basically, in other words, the first part of this. It's this concept of, he basically is forecasting that, this concept of they are going to pray when they are removed and this temple is no longer here, and you'll eventually turn back to them, which is kind of interesting. You kind of need to study that out a little bit more. But in 1 Kings 8:35, he says, when the heavens are shut up and there's no rain because your people have sinned against you, and when they pray towards this place, Jerusalem, the temple, and give praise to your name and turn away from their sin because you have not afflicted them. That's 1 Kings 8:35. And so that happens in a couple of verses later. It's talking about this concept of what we are seeing in Daniel, where they are on their knees praying towards Jerusalem. There's some other scriptures here. Psalm 55:17 says, evening, morning, and noon I cry out in distress. So there's this concept of when they prayed. Acts 10:30, Cornelius answered, 3 days ago I was in my house praying at this hour at 3 in the afternoon. So Cornelius prayed at 3 in the afternoon. Acts 3:1, one day Peter and John were going up to the temple at the time of prayer at 3 in the afternoon. So there's this concept of Daniel praying at certain times, and these were the times. It is believed these are the times when the sacrifices happened in the temple. And since the temple was no longer having these sacrifices, it was holy and acceptable to pray, to not only pray, but to turn your face towards Jerusalem and pray. And so there was a prohibition, and Daniel was asked to kneel before the statue, and you probably know the story and all this, and he wasn't supposed to pray, but he continues to pray no matter what. And he did not care. And so he continued that tradition of praying. And so what does that have to do with anything? Well, this concept of praying and fasting. So Daniel also, definitely there's a period of fasting. And when you go through fasting, you're burning incense in the temple. You're burning the fat. You're burning the excess. You're burning the stuff you don't need, and you're laying it bare before the Father and burning away the impurities. Okay, well, that has a lot to do with what we're talking about here. And so Daniel, he was committed to doing these daily sacrifices in his own temple, if you will, his own tabernacle, and he understood that concept. And I hope and pray that we won't be deceived, because the times are changing, if you haven't noticed. But it's nothing new. This is just part of a cycle. And so many of you have been, like to watch the train wreck. And so we're all drawn to this craziness, and we're just like, I can't believe they're doing this. Did you hear this? Did you hear that this guy is doing this? Whatever. I mean, you can fill your mind with all kinds of stuff, and it could all be true. But in the end, we know this is all cyclical. The world goes through periods where there's freedom, and then there's oppression, and the Father saves the people from this oppression. So there's a remnant, and we're part of that remnant. But I pray that we're not deceived, that we can learn to be like Daniel and learn to teach our children to be like Daniel. And basically in Daniel 3:16 through 20, Daniel basically says, you know what? And you can see the text there. He's about to be, if this is a movie scene, there's a fire in the background and you can hear it roaring, and there's people in custody. There's people in authority, and clearly Daniel and his men are not in authority, and they're about to die. And, it looks like all hope is lost. And there's this moment where they're standing in front of the fire, and Daniel speaks up and he says, you know what? I believe that my God can save me no matter what. And I'm also fine if he chooses not to save me. That doesn't mean he's not God. And those are such powerful words that we need to embrace, and we need to understand that Daniel was a did a lot of things right. He was a righteous young man, and a model to look at. And he did not think that he was so special that he was guaranteed that no harm would happen to him. And his faith is unbelievable, really. The standing at that moment, and he's just so confident that, you know what, it's okay. It's okay if he doesn't save me. I've got to stand. I've got to make this stand. And so I long for a day when our children can, and ourselves, when we can be strong and independent enough and confident in our Father that we can be like Daniel, because we may face that, and if we don't face it, our children will. I long for the time when we have our true inheritance, a true inheritance that can't be destroyed. It can't be taken away. It cannot be taxed. This inheritance is waiting for us, and we need to help and to get as many people to that inheritance as possible. So I just wanted to kind of leave you with those thoughts. Go back and look at Exodus 30, look at Exodus 40, look at John 13 about the washing of the feet, and look at Daniel 3 and look at Daniel 6 and these other scriptures that we talked about. So when it comes to all these things, I just encourage you to look at how these passages apply to us being a tabernacle, to us being the temple, and how we need to burn off our own thoughts, hearts, and emotions, especially as we enter into this Passover season. Some of you have started Passover. Some of us are about to start Passover. And during the period of when we get rid of all the unleavened bread in our home and get rid of the leaven of man's teachings, use this time period to help burn away the impurities, to burn away the nonsense and the garbage that we fill our hearts with, and learn to quit listening to all the garbage and conspiracy theories. And yes, the world is out to get us and mankind is evil. We know that. We don't have to fill our minds with things that we already know. Instead, we should be consumed with understanding the principles found in Torah. And as I study Torah, I can't tell you how many doors it opens and how many things it helps me connect the dots, and how I can see so many of the things that we read and see and hear about in the New Testament and its roots and its origins, where and how it began. But once again, we don't claim to have all the answers here at Sabbath Lounge. We don't claim to be an expert or an authority or to be over anyone. None of those things. And we just want to try to help point people to the Father. And we appreciate you stopping by. We appreciate you listening. Your time is very valuable. It's just look at social media and the free things that they give us. That tells you that your time is worth billions of dollars. So time is extremely valuable. We do appreciate that you give this a like, a comment, subscribe, share. Please hit the like button, thumbs up, something. Do something, please. And we want to help get the word out, not because we think this is so amazing and so special, but we do feel like there's a remnant. The remnant is growing. Lots of people are seeking, and we just want to join you on that journey. And may the Father continue to bless you as you walk out and do His commandments. Thanks for listening to Sabbath Lounge.